there, this is Beth with another YouTube Pagan Challenge, and it's question number 18. What does deity, God, divine mean to you? It's kind of a big subject. Deity, I'm just going to refer to things as deity. When I'm talking male or female, it's just easier to do it that way, and I often do refer to things as deity anyways. Yeah, I think it's an interesting subject because, there's this question of, are they real, or are they like real as in entities, or are they just kind of like these Jungian archetypes that are just part of society and culture? And for me, that's kind of an interesting question because I'm very animistic. Trees, rocks, my tarot decks, things like that. Even art, really. Anything can be endued with a soul, as far as I'm concerned. Which starts when you start applying that to deity. This is thought forms. These are things that have had so much energy over centuries, millennia, at times, poured into them. So just think, pouring energy into a rock over a period of years, how that changes how it feels. Imagine that rock with centuries and millennia of energy. And, granted, rock is a physical, tangible thing I can touch, whereas, like, deity is not, unless, of course, you believe that, like, say, a statue can hold the deity, then you could touch it. But all that energy, all those, just how can they not be real? There's a lot of energy that gets thrown at God forms and deities of all sorts. And that's, for me, why not have them be real? But at the same time, I also realize I work with people and interact with people who may have different views. And really, I've come to the conclusion it doesn't matter if you believe they're real or if you believe there's some kind of just archetype that helps you understand your world. They're still very powerful. Either way, they hold a great deal of meaning and a lot of power. And that power and that thought and that energy we throw at deities, gods, creatures, entities, whatever you want to call them, is a lot. And, it's not like, say, in chaos magic, making a servitor, where pretty much it's maybe one person or a small group of people working with that servitor. And it's cultures. It's hundreds of people over centuries. And that's really kind of fucking cool, in my opinion. For me, deity is definitely something that is real. Weird stuff happens. It's like sitting there painting and someone says frig. It's just clear as day. And that was, how I started working more with Norse deities at this point in time because of that voice. And who said it to me? Was it a guide? Was it a god? I don't know. But something had to have enough energy to pop into my consciousness and have me hear that very clearly. So for me, deity is very much something that is a real thing. They do exist as far as I'm concerned in some way. Maybe not in the way that I exist, but they're out there. And I do choose to work with deities, mostly goddess. Although God, I have worked with some gods. But mainly my emphasis has been on female deities, with some, I'm saying a lot, no more with interjections of Godhead, such as Hern was, I just stopped to get bad. I'm going to start slapping my hand every time I today. Hearn was an early god. Actually, no, Hades. Hades would be the first one, really, because that whole Persephone myth. And I was as fascinated with Hades as I was fascinated with Persephone. So there was an equal fascination there with that myth of her and more the ponderance of the female mysteries of leaving childhood, of being the maiden and going into not really motherhood, but into another phase of her life, of changes that occur as a result of her being kidnapped in the rape of Persephone. Whereas Hades with the god of death, I just god of death, very, very fascinating in that. He's Persephone's husband, was also very fascinating to me. And kind of understanding that. So really early on, Persephone and Hades were the two that I really, really, really super identified with as a child in learning Greek mythology and reading about it. I'd say Kronos too. I always find Kronos extremely fascinating too. Just that whole, let's eat our kids kind of weirdness, and then not digesting your children. Only a God cannot digest something that was just so bizarre, and then he vomits them back up. But there's so much. The myths, and not all myths, I mean, it's such a thing, it always comes back to we know but we don't know. We have this amount of stuff, but we don't really fully understand what happened in ancient Greece or in pre-Christian Norse. We only can guess with these deities as far as academic sense, and it's working with them. I feel that we get to know them and we get a sense of that power and the realness that they hold within them, and that realness that can be brought into our lives. And I think it's in that application of working with them, whether it's journey work, prayer, honoring them, things like that, where deity really comes in. And once again, I'm not that person that sets up, that does elaborate things. There's a little shrine I have to Kuan Yin right now because I have a statuette of her. But really, that's the only formal God thing. I have a bowl that's dedicated to Frigg that probably needs to be cleaned out. I'm not sure what's in there. It might be a Hershey's Kiss left over from Christmas. But I have no more ums. I have a bowl that's dedicated to Frigg, a little shrine to Kuan Yin. Those are minor ways of working. I think the deeper ways come when we bring them more into our lives and see how we can pull that into us, how we can pull that information that they have for us out of them and back into the world. There's so much of, at least for me, so much of the path has to be experienced. It has to be experimental. There's this component that we will never know. And in some ways will never work for us in how we live in this world now as compared to how we lived, cat hair, back then. And that makes a huge difference. And I don't feel that the gods have remained these stagnant creatures that only can relate to what was back then. They've seen the world change. They've seen things change. They've watched their followers, flow away from them and then flow back in a way, I feel. And reconnected with different people who are from other cultures. And it's that whole, there's this weird line, when does it become appropriate to work with someone else's culture? Because I definitely work with some cultures that are technically not mine. And I don't know, cultural appropriation and deity is kind of an interesting thing, especially when you start looking at Native Americans and how people have we've already screwed them over so hardcore in America and many other places, that what little that we have left. But at the same time, when you look at it, what we did to the Native Americans, what Christianity has done to the Native Americans was done prior to the people, in many ways, that were our religious heritages were also destroyed in a similar manner. Well, not quite the full and full out genocide that the American government perpetuated against the Native Americans here. It's a similar process of how the pagan cultures were destroyed, and we lost a lot. We lost a lot. Actually, Christianity has destroyed their own stuff, and they've lost a lot too, because they've destroyed their own heritage because they didn't agree with it. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing when you start putting other cultures, especially monotheistic cultures, on top of polytheistic cultures, because definitely polytheistic for me, and you can have as many gods as you want. I don't care. Once I have more than one, I work with more than one. And I work with more, from Mesopotamia to Greece. I do touch on some Native Americans, like Grandmother Toad and Spider have always spoken to me greatly. Their mythologies and their stories have always rung very true in my heart. So they do exist as part of my personal pantheon. And yeah, like the goddess tiles I created are very much a part of what I use. The goddesses that I work with and have worked with, or at least fascinate me. It's on my altar, which is right next to me, so handy dandy. It's the experience, though. I think it has to be experienced at this point in time, no matter how much literature is out there, because we don't know what our predecessors thought about their own deities in many ways, because we don't understand how they understood, no matter how much we study and how much we puzzle and piece together. Yeah, for me, they're real. As far as I'm concerned, they exist. And I don't think they necessarily exist in the way that they used to exist. I think their relationships changed as our relationships to them changed. And their roles in the world have changed. Oh my God, I'm just umming horribly today. That the relationships has changed. Our relationship to the world has changed, so has theirs. And I don't see anyone as static. I don't care how old that god or goddess is. They're perpetually, I feel, evolving as we evolve, because as we evolve, they change. And we change. I think the only thing that's eternal is change, the movement of time, things like that. Even time, though, is a man-made weirdness concept. So let's not even go there. Deity, though, is something that just is. It's something I choose to work with. I've known people who walk an atheistic pagan path and do some marvelous things. And for me, that is what drew me to paganism, was the diversity and the willingness to let people be what they are. And it always annoys me when people say, you can't do that kind of stuff, which it's silly. We're pagans. We can do whatever the fuck we want. That's why we're pagans. And, within the confines of coven, yes, you have coven rules and regulations. But each witch is a solitary, even if you are within a coven, because a small part of your work takes place in the coven, and the rest, the bulk of it, is all at home, and it's all solitary. But back to Godhead and deity. Else does it mean to me? I think it enriches life. It's fun to work with gods, whether you believe in them or not. It's interesting to learn about them. They bring different dimensions into your life and create some very interesting path working opportunities for people. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And I know I've kind of talked parts of this subject over and over again in several things, such as like culture and stuff like that, mythology. But it's so true. We only can understand through our own filter, no matter how hard and how well we can put aside our own culture. We never quite can. It's always there. And believe me, you think you're doing a good job, take a class on kinship and get your little mind blown. Because once you start stepping, it's like one of the basic things of your culture is how you define kinship, and you start like looking at how other people define kinship and how they do things, and you realize how just culturally ethnocentric you are about kinship, and it hurts your brains. You lose the you stop saying things like my uncle and you start saying things like my mother's brother, because not every culture just says, oh, that's my uncle. They define that it's your mother's brother or your father's brother. It's like that. Sister's brother even is game. Serious. So you can only filter it through you and your culture. No matter how well you can kind of shove that aside, it's that filter will always be there no matter what you do. No matter how aware you are that you have that cultural filter. And what Greece, what we have was a cultural filter in Greece, is now long gone. Norse. It doesn't matter where you are. Those cultures that many of us draw our deities from have changed drastically and are no longer understood, even the ones that are well documented. There are parts of antiquity that you get, people just don't know what it means because we have no context left for it. It makes no sense for us. And I think deity too comes in that if you try to completely understand, say, Odin in the ancient pre-Christian sense, you're going to get this teeny tiny aspect of what Odin was and not what Odin currently is. Because there is a vast difference between what he was and what he's grown into in those years that Christianity took over the North. So, and then coming back into the old ways again. So things are very different. And we only have our cultural filter, and they only had their cultural filter. So we do our best with that and understanding how our deities work with us and things like that. And that's why I think it's experience, especially in experimenting with how you experience deity, is very important. Okay. I feel like I'm repeating myself. I'm not sure. Sometimes it's hard to tell. So I'm going to sign off at 18 minutes and 21 seconds. Talk to you.